Welcome, everyone, to the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Greg Gonzalez. On this week's episode, we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to go over a lot of the listener questions that we've received over the last month or so. Listeners, thank you for sending your questions in and going to our website, which is retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. Love getting all of your questions. All the questions you're going to hear today, I asked the individual who submitted the question if we could talk about it on the podcast, and they said absolutely. And then for those people that wanted to talk about their question in private, I totally understand, and I will offer phone conversations with those people to discuss not only their questions, but also maybe dive a little deeper into their situation so I can give the best advice possible. Now, on today's episode, I'll do the best I can providing information and advice to the people that are submitting the questions. However, I would ask them to double check with, whoever it is that they trust to provide their family with prudent financial advice before they make any decisions. That may be their attorney. It might be their CPA or financial planner. But definitely check with that person because they'll have a better understanding of your entire, financial footprint, so to speak. And to all the listeners out there, if you have a question that you want to run by me, again, visit my website, which is retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. That's retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. We can talk about your question on the air. We can keep it private and have a phone conversation. That's totally up to you. While you're on the website, you can download my retirement secret sauce and my 2020 tax guide. So feel free to check those out as well. Let's go ahead and get started with the first question of the day. The first question comes from Dan in Michigan. Dan's question says the following. Hello, Greg. I'm inheriting my father's IRA. He just passed away in January 2020. I'm 57 years old, and I heard I can move this IRA into my own IRA if I already have one. I also heard that I will need to take RMDs. I don't know what that means. I don't want to pay the 10% early penalty since I am under 59 and a half. What would you do if you were planning on working until 65 like I am? Thanks for your help, Dan. Dan, first of all, thank you for your question, and I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your father. This is a topic that a lot of people get confused on. You're not the only one. The rules are different if you inherit your spouse's IRA versus you inherit someone else's. It could be mom and dad's IRA. It could be your aunt and uncle. It could be a friend. So the IRS breaks up the rules into inheriting a spousal IRA or inheriting a non-spousal IRA. Dan, in your case, you're inheriting a non-spousal IRA, which is your father's. One of the rules of inheriting a spousal IRA is if your spouse passes away, you can move his or her IRA into your own IRA. But that's very unique. It only applies to inheriting your spouse's IRA. You can't do it if you're inheriting a non-spousal IRA. So again, your situation, your father passed away, so you wouldn't be able to move your father's IRA into your own IRA. It has to stay as a beneficiary IRA or an inherited IRA. Those words are used interchangeably. Next, you mentioned that you are 57 years old and you didn't want to pay the 10% early withdrawal penalty by taking a withdrawal from this inherited IRA before 59 and a half. I've got good news for you. With inherited IRAs or beneficiary IRAs, there is no 10% early withdrawal penalty for anybody. You could be 18 years old, inherit your uncle's IRA, take a distribution from it, and that 10% penalty would not apply. Next, what I want you to check up on is called the Secure Act. It was just passed in December of 2019, and you can even download a summary that I put together of the Secure Act at my website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And you can read more about the other provisions and how they might impact you. But the big provision here deals with inherited IRAs. It has to do with when the original IRA owner passed away. So in this case, your father passed away in January 2020. Well, guess what? This Secure Act applies directly to you. It's speaking to you. What this provision says is that if you inherit an IRA from someone that passed away after January 1st, 2020, there are new rules for RMDs, required minimum distributions. So in other words, your dad has this IRA that is all tax deferred. And the way the rules used to work was that you could stretch that IRA out, and every year you would take what were called required minimum distributions based on your age and the value of the account, or you could take withdrawals out over 5 years. It was your choice. Now, for those that inherit an IRA from somebody that passes away after January 1st, 2020, the rules are totally different. This applies directly to you, Dan. Now the rules say you have 10 years to take withdrawals from that account. At the end of the 10 years, all the money has to be out and the taxes have to be paid on the account. But you have 10 years to do it. You can take 10% a year for 10 years. You can take no withdrawals the first 5 years. And then the next 5 years, you take all of the withdrawals. You can take all the withdrawals in 1 year. And then the account will be depleted. So Dan, looking at your situation, if you're 57 and you don't plan on retiring until 65, when you're 67, this money has to be out of this inherited IRA. By that point, the withdrawals are required. Your strategy might call for more withdrawals or distributions from this inherited IRA when you are 65, 66, and 67, because presumably you might be retired and in a lower tax situation. On the other hand, you might decide to take distributions while you're still working and then just bump up your contributions to your 401k by the same amount. In other words, it would be a wash if you took $5,000 out of the inherited IRA, paid the taxes, and put $5,000 more per year into your 401k. You're getting the tax savings there, the tax deferral, and then you pay the taxes on the $5,000. So essentially it's a wash. It's going to really come down to, how much is in this inherited IRA and how that plays into your full plan. So you might want to consult with your trusted tax advisor or financial planner. In the meantime, what you can do, Dan, is contact the custodian of your father's IRA. They will need probably some paperwork and a copy of the death certificate, and then they'll need information from you to set up your inherited IRA with their firm. You have the decision to leave that inherited IRA with that custodian, or you can transfer it to another custodian. As long as you keep the registration the same as an inherited IRA, you can hold an inherited IRA wherever you want. You don't have to stay with the custodian that your father was using. Dan, I hope that helps you with the planning that you have ahead. Our next question comes from John, and John has a great question. John says, Greg, I was considering gifting part of my Roth IRA and my IRA to my children. What's the best way to do that? My kids are in a lower tax bracket and they could use the money. Is this possible, and how do I do it? John, thanks for your question. This is a very interesting question. With IRAs or Roth IRAs, they are retirement accounts. IRA means individual retirement account. So they're based on your tax ID number, your social security number. So a husband and wife can't have a joint IRA because it's an individual retirement account. John, your wife can have a Roth IRA, which is going to be a separate account than your Roth IRA. As far as gifting retirement accounts to children, it's actually not allowed. You can name your children as beneficiaries, and if you wanted to gift them the money now, you would have to withdraw the money out of a Roth IRA, which would be tax-free. Of course, assuming you are over 59 and a half and the Roth IRA has been opened for at least 5 years or more. And then assuming your children are eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA, they can turn around and put $6,000 per year into their own Roth IRA. The IRA is going to be a little bit different because any distributions you take out of your own IRA are going to be subject to taxes. And then after you're paying the taxes, you could gift them, theoretically, the leftover proceeds. Please keep in mind there are gift tax rules, and the annual exclusion is $15,000 in 2020. Our next question comes from Jan in Ohio. Jan writes, Greg, I hope you can help me. My friend just lost her job, and a week later, her husband was killed in a motorcycle accident. He was 67 years old. She is much younger. She is only 58. Her husband was receiving $2,000 per month from Social Security. How much will she receive now that he has passed? Wow. Jan, I'm so sorry to hear about your friend's loss and losing her husband a week after being laid off. That's got to be very rough. She's going to need your support in this time of need. So be a good friend, Jan. Your question is very tough, and I'm glad you included their ages. So your friend's only 58 years old. So the way Social Security survivor benefit works, which means if your spouse passes away, there's a survivor benefit, it doesn't kick in until age 60. So your friend's only 58 years old. So the horrible news I have is there isn't going to be a survivor benefit until your friend turns 60. So she's got to wait 2 more years to get anything out of Social Security. I know that's not the answer that you probably wanted to hear. Keep in mind, she can always book a meeting at the local Social Security office to have an idea of when she turns 60, what that benefit is going to be. I know it wasn't a part of your question, but I'm hoping there was some life insurance on her husband that will help her out in this time of need, because it sounds like she's looking for a monthly income at this point. Thanks again for your question, Jan. Our next question comes from David in California. David writes, Greg, can you set the record straight for me? Are annuities good or are they bad? My brother-in-law says to stay away from them, and I've heard people at work say that they're great. What are your thoughts? What can you tell me? David, thank you so much for your question. This is an excellent question. Annuities are one of the most misunderstood investments out there. They can be very easy to understand, and they can be very complicated. And the reason being is because there's so many different types of annuities. One annuity doesn't look anything like another annuity. Think about fruit. When I think of fruit, I think of apples and pears and nectarines and plums, oranges. Those are fruit. But you know what also is included in the fruit category? Tomatoes, cucumbers, and avocados. Those don't seem like fruit to me, but they are. And they are far from an apple or an orange. Many annuities out there have a lifetime income component to them. So when someone says, oh, annuities are bad, does that mean your Social Security benefit is bad? Or your teacher's pension is bad? By definition, an annuity is a sum of money payable yearly or at regular intervals. Take your Social Security benefit, for example. The regular interval is monthly. You get your monthly Social Security retirement benefit check. Most pensions are monthly. Many retirees out there like having an annuity in their portfolio, so their retirement income is guaranteed. I look at annuity like a tool. Ask yourself, is a mutual fund better than a bond? Is an annuity better than a mutual fund? The answer is you can't compare the two. It's apples to oranges. They're different investments. That's like saying, is a saw better than a hammer? Is a hammer better than a screwdriver? No, they're tools. They serve different purposes. If you're putting on a roof, I'd rather have the hammer than I would a screwdriver. It just depends on what you're looking for. You want to have the right tool for the job. What I will say is that annuities can be very complex to the average person out there. So you want to make sure that you have an advisor you like and you trust to help explain and teach you the ins and outs of the annuity and why it might be appropriate. With that being said, there's plenty of people out there that wouldn't benefit from an annuity at all. This is a very difficult question to answer. It's kind of like asking, is a SUV good or bad? An SUV might be good for some people, Maybe they have a big family. Maybe they need a lot of cargo space. Maybe they like to travel and need that extra room. And other people out there, they aren't looking for that big, clunky SUV. They want something that's compact, maybe something that's safe, and has good fuel economy. With that being said, annuities are becoming very, very popular, especially for the 77 million baby boomers out there. And they also have many advantages, such as lifetime income, tax deferral, and some even have ways to protect your principal. Just remember, there's no magic bullet when it comes to investments. Annuities are just a tool. A hammer is not better than a saw, and a saw is not better than a screwdriver. But someone out there could use that saw, and someone out there could use that screwdriver. Before you purchase an annuity, make sure you know what it is, how it works, and why it's right for you. I hope that helps. Our last question of the month comes from George in Florida. George writes, "Hey Greg, I'm 72 years old. I started my Social Security benefit 2 years ago at age 70. When I started, it was approximately $3,000 per month. Right now, my wife is 64 years old. She has been a homemaker and stay-at-home mom almost her entire life, so her Social Security benefit is very, very low. We were planning on starting her Social Security spousal benefit either this year or when she turns full retirement age, or just waiting until age 70. What are your thoughts?" George, first off, thank you so much for the question. For those out there who don't understand how the spousal benefit works, it's pretty easy nowadays. When you turn full retirement age, which we're going to assume for George's wife is age 66, she will have a choice. She can get half of George's benefit or her own benefit, whichever is greater. George mentioned that her own Social Security benefit wasn't very high because she was a stay-at-home mom and a homemaker most of her life. So a spousal benefit is going to max out at full retirement age. So in George's wife's scenario, it's age 66. So she'll be able to get half of George's benefit at full retirement age. And what's key here is it's not half of what George got at age 70, which is $3,000 a month. She's not going to get half of that. She's going to get half of George's benefit at his full retirement age, even though he waited until 70 to claim his benefit. So when I grab my calculator, that's roughly $1,136 a month. So in my opinion, I would tell George to look at claiming the spousal benefit between now and full retirement age, and don't wait any later than full retirement age because the spousal benefit doesn't get higher. It doesn't grow by deferring past George's wife's full retirement age of 66. George, without knowing more about your retirement situation, I wouldn't be able to give advice on whether I think you should claim now while your spouse is 64 or waiting a couple years until she's full retirement age. But what I can tell you is she shouldn't wait any longer than full retirement age to claim the spousal benefit because it doesn't get any bigger. She's not going to get any more money by waiting. There's no advantage. Of course, if she does decide to claim now or before her full retirement age, her spousal benefit will be reduced. So that's going to factor into your decision as well. I think we got through 5 questions this week in today's episode. That was a lot of fun. As a reminder, check out our website, which is retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. That's retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. Submit your questions for the show, and we might discuss your question in a future podcast. Thanks for tuning in today, and remember, always dream big. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, financial advisor, or tax advisor prior to investing. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC.